The diplomatic shuttle trembled as another priority transmission burst through every available channel. Ambassador Talia Reid dropped the trade agreement she had been reviewing and grabbed the console with both hands. Her assistant pilot looked back with wide eyes, his orange skin turning pale yellow with worry. "Another demand from the Kryn fleet," he said, his voice shaking. "They want answers now." Talia pulled up the tactical display and felt her stomach drop. What had been 12 Kryn warships an hour ago had grown to over 60. They were all pointed at a single target, a human destroyer that drifted silent and dark near the border zone. The ship's identification beacon confirmed her worst fears. UES Relentless. Captain Daniel Cross's vessel. "Get me high command," Talia ordered. The response came quickly, but it brought no comfort. The Relentless should have been performing routine patrols 3 sectors away. Nobody knew why it was here. Nobody knew why it had gone silent. The last recorded communication had been a standard status report 48 hours ago. "This is Admiral Voss of the Kryn Third Fleet." The voice that filled the cabin was harsh and mechanical, filtered through a translation matrix. "Your vessel has violated Imperial space. This is an act of war. You have 1 hour to provide explanation, or we will consider all human territories hostile." Talia activated her diplomatic credentials and opened a channel. "Admiral Voss, I am Ambassador Talia Reid representing Earth's diplomatic corps. I request permission to approach the vessel and investigate. We have no information about why it entered your space." "Your ignorance is not our concern," Voss replied. "Your warship crossed our border with weapons armed. We have every right to destroy it." "The weapons aren't even powered," Talia said, checking her sensors again. "The entire ship appears to be running on emergency reserves. Something has clearly gone wrong." There was a long pause. Talia could imagine the Kryn admiral consulting with his staff, weighing the political implications. The Kryn Empire was powerful, but they had always avoided direct conflict with humanity. Both species had too much to lose. "You have 30 minutes to board and explain," Voss finally said. "If you attempt any hostile action, we will fire on both vessels." Talia's shuttle accelerated toward the Relentless. As they drew closer, the damage became visible. Scorch marks covered the hull. Several sections showed signs of weapons fire, though not from Kryn energy signatures. Something else had attacked the destroyer. "Life signs are minimal," her pilot reported. "I'm reading maybe 80 to 90 people aboard. The ship's crew complement is supposed to be 200. Talia felt cold. Over 100 people missing or dead. What had happened out here? The shuttle docked with the Relentless through an emergency airlock. Talia pulled on a breathing mask and grabbed a portable scanner before stepping into the corridor. Emergency lights flickered overhead, casting everything in shades of red and shadow. The air smelled of burnt metal and something else, something organic and unpleasant. She moved quickly toward the bridge, her security escort close behind. They passed empty corridors and darkened rooms. No bodies, no signs of crew, just silence and the occasional groan of stressed metal. The bridge was abandoned. Command chairs sat empty, their stations blinking with error messages. Talia accessed the main computer and pulled up the ship's logs. The most recent entries made her hands shake. Distress signal detected. Civilian vessel under attack. Torvin's signatures confirmed. Pursuing to render aid. The next log was timestamped 6 hours later. Heavy engagement. Torvin slaver vessels destroyed. Rescued 847 civilians from cargo holds. Taking heavy damage. Engineering offline. Navigation failing. Drifting across border into Kryn space. Unable to correct course. Talia switched to internal sensors and found what she was looking for. The cargo bays were full of life signs. Hundreds of them, clustered together in the largest spaces on the ship. "Medical bay," her security chief said, pointing down a side corridor. "I'm picking up wounded there." They found Captain Cross lying on a medical bed, his left arm wrapped in emergency bandages. A young medical officer was treating a burn across his chest. Cross looked up when Talia entered, his face gray with pain and exhaustion. "Ambassador Reed," he said, trying to sit up. The medic pushed him back down. "What happened here?" Talia asked. Cross took a shaky breath. "We picked up a civilian distress call. Colony ship full of families. The Torvin had them, were loading children into holding cells. We couldn't just ignore it." "So you pursued them into Kryn space?" "We pursued them until we stopped them," Cross corrected. "We destroyed their ships and freed the captives. 847 people, Ambassador. 200 of them are children. We took damage in the fight. By the time we realized we'd crossed the border, navigation was dead. We've been drifting for hours." Talia closed her eyes. A humanitarian rescue. Of course it was. Cross was known for following his conscience over his orders. It was what made him a great captain and a diplomatic nightmare. "The Kryn want us to surrender the ship," she said. "Admiral Voss has his entire fleet ready to fire." "The refugees are V-Rin," Cross said quietly. "Do you know what that means?" Talia felt ice in her veins. The V-Rin were one of the species the Kryn Empire had conquered centuries ago. They lived as servants and laborers throughout Kryn space, technically free but practically enslaved through debt and legal restrictions. "They're not going to let us leave with those people," she whispered. "I know," Cross said. "That's why I didn't try to run. I wanted to make sure someone would know what happened here, why we made the choice we did." An alarm sounded throughout the ship. Talia's communicator buzzed with an incoming message from Admiral Voss. "Your time is up, Ambassador. We are detecting V-Rin life signs aboard your vessel. They are property of the Kryn Empire. Surrender them immediately or face destruction." Talia looked at Cross, then at the medic, then at the hundreds of innocent lives sheltering in the cargo bays below. She thought about her career, about the peace she had spent years building between species, about all the careful diplomacy that was about to shatter. She opened the channel to Voss and spoke clearly. "The people aboard this ship are refugees under the protection of the Galactic Humanitarian Accords. We will not surrender them." The silence that followed felt like the moment before a storm breaks. Admiral Voss's response came through every speaker on the damaged destroyer. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority and zero patience. "The Galactic Humanitarian Accords do not apply to the Kryn Empire. We never signed your treaties. The V-Rin aboard your vessel are subjects of our empire, and they will be returned. You have 1 hour to begin transfer operations." Talia stood in the cargo bay surrounded by hundreds of frightened faces. The V-Rin were smaller than humans, with delicate features and pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the emergency lighting. They huddled together in family groups, children clinging to parents, everyone watching her with a mixture of hope and terror. A young girl stepped forward. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with large eyes that held far too much understanding for someone so young. "Are they going to take us back?" she asked in perfect English. Talia knelt down to meet her eyes. "What's your name?" "Lyra," the girl said. "My family escaped from a labor facility 6 months ago. We heard there were colony worlds where V-Rin could be free. We saved everything we had to buy passage on that ship." Her small hands clenched into fists. "The Torvin found us 3 days ago. They said they had a buyer waiting, someone from the Empire who wanted us back." The pieces fell into place in Talia's mind. This wasn't random piracy. The Torvin slavers had been hired by someone in the Kryn Empire to retrieve escaped workers. The colony ship had been hunted down deliberately. She stood and activated her communicator. "Captain Cross, I need you in Cargo Bay 3. Cross arrived minutes later, leaning heavily on a support cane. His medical officer followed close behind, clearly unhappy about him moving around. But Cross waved off the concern and focused on Talia. The Torvin were hired guns, Talia said. Someone in the Kryn Empire paid them to find these people. Cross looked at the families gathered around them and nodded slowly. That explains why they fought so hard. We destroyed 4 Torvin warships. They usually run when faced with military opposition. This time they stayed and fought until we disabled their engines. We can't hand these people over, Talia said. You know what will happen to them. I know, Cross replied, but I also know what will happen if we refuse. Voss has enough firepower out there to reduce this ship to atoms, and your diplomatic shuttle won't survive a single volley. Talia walked to a viewport and stared out at the Kryn fleet. More ships continued to arrive, their formation tightening like a noose. Humanity had 3 destroyers within range, still hours away at maximum speed. Even when they arrived, they would be hopelessly outnumbered. Her communicator buzzed, a text message from her pilot on the shuttle. Multiple civilian vessels approaching, unknown configuration. They're broadcasting on open channels asking what's happening. Talia pulled up the sensor data on a portable display. Sure enough, dozens of ships were entering the sector. Freighters, passenger liners, even small personal craft. They were coming from multiple directions, all converging on this one spot. What are they doing? Cross asked, looking over her shoulder. The answer came moments later when Lyra's voice echoed through the cargo bay. The young girl had found a communication panel and was speaking into it, her words broadcast on every frequency. My name is Lyra. I am 7 years old. I am V-Rin. The Kryn Empire is here to take me and my family back to a labor facility where we will work until we die. A human ship saved us from slavers. Now that human ship is going to be destroyed for helping us. Is this what the galaxy has become? Do we watch children get dragged back into chains because of borders and laws? Talia rushed to stop her, but Cross caught her arm. Let her speak, he said quietly. Please, Lyra continued, tears streaming down her face. If anyone out there believes in freedom, if anyone thinks children deserve better than a life of servitude, please help us. We have nowhere else to go. The message went silent. The cargo bay fell quiet except for the soft sounds of V-Rin families holding each other tighter. Talia's display lit up with incoming transmissions. The civilian ships were responding. Their messages flooded every channel. This is the freighter Distant Star. We stand with the refugees. Medical ship Mercy's hand positioning to assist. Personal yacht Golden Wing standing by. One by one, the civilian vessels moved into formation around the damaged Relentless. They weren't warships. Most had no weapons at all, but they placed themselves between the human destroyer and the Kryn fleet, creating a shield of innocent vessels. Admiral Voss's voice returned, colder than before. Unidentified civilian vessels, you are interfering with Imperial business. Disperse immediately or you will be fired upon. None of them moved. Talia felt something shift in her chest. These weren't humans coming to rescue their own. These were representatives from dozens of different species, many she didn't even recognize. They were risking everything because a child had asked them to care. Captain, her pilot called over the communicator. You need to see this. The civilian fleet, they're not random ships. I'm identifying vessels from species humanity helped during the frontier conflicts. The Delian, the Core, the Nessari. These are people whose colonies we defended 10 years ago. Cross smiled despite the pain evident on his face. They remember. Remember what? Talia asked. That humanity shows up when people need help. Looks like they're returning the favor. New sensor alerts flashed across Talia's display. Another massive ship was entering the sector, this one broadcasting Kryn military codes. But the designation was different. Higher authority. High Commander Drask of the Kryn Imperial Guard has entered the sector, her pilot reported. He's broadcasting to all vessels. Drask's voice filled the channel, deeper, and more dangerous than Voss's. This sector is now under martial authority. All civilian vessels have 10 minutes to disperse. Any ship remaining after that time will be considered hostile and destroyed. This includes vessels carrying non-combatants. The Empire does not recognize civilian immunity when Imperial law is being violated. Talia looked at the display showing hundreds of civilian ships, families aboard those vessels, people who had come because a child asked for help. She opened a channel to all of them. Civilian vessels, this is Ambassador Talia Reed. Please withdraw. We cannot ask you to sacrifice yourselves. The responses came immediately, all saying variations of the same thing. We're not leaving. Our children are watching. If we run now, what does that teach them? Talia closed her eyes and made a choice that would change everything. Then we stand together. High Commander Drask's flagship dwarfed every other vessel in the sector. The massive dreadnought carried enough firepower to level a small moon, and every weapon system was now active and locked onto targets. The countdown timer displayed on every screen showed 8 minutes remaining. Talia stood on the bridge of the Relentless, watching the tactical display with Captain Cross beside her. The civilian fleet had grown to over 300 vessels, forming a scattered shell around the damaged destroyer. None of them had shields strong enough to withstand even a single shot from Kryn military weapons. They're going to die, Cross said quietly. All of them, because they answered a child's call for help. We can surrender the refugees, Talia suggested, though the words tasted like poison. Save the civilians. Cross shook his head. The Viren already said they'd rather die free than go back, and honestly, Ambassador, I think they're right. A new communication channel opened, this one routed through heavily encrypted Kryn military protocols. The voice that spoke was female, younger than Voss or Drask, and carried an edge of desperation. Human vessels, this is Commander Wren of the Kryn destroyer Silent Wing. I need to speak with whoever is making decisions. This channel is secure. Talia exchanged glances with Cross before responding. This is Ambassador Reed. Go ahead, Commander. What you're seeing here, this response from High Commander Drask, this is not the will of all Kryn, Wren said quickly. There are many of us who question the old ways. The treatment of the Viren, the enforcement of servitude contracts, the violent suppression of anyone who speaks against the system. We've been waiting for the right moment to act. Act how? Talia asked. The reformist movement within our military has been documenting abuses for years. We have evidence of illegal slave trading, of Kryn nobles hiring pirates to retrieve escaped workers, of entire families being imprisoned for debt violations. We've been afraid to release this information because we knew it would mean civil war. Cross leaned forward. What changed? You did, Wren replied. Your ship, your rescue of those civilians, the stand you're taking now. It's being broadcast across the entire sector. Millions of Kryn citizens are watching. They're seeing their military prepare to fire on unarmed civilian vessels. They're hearing a child beg for freedom. Some of them are starting to ask questions. How many ships do you have? Talia asked. In this sector, 23 vessels under commanders sympathetic to reform, across the Empire, maybe a third of our total fleet. But if we move now, if we oppose Drask directly, it will tear the Empire apart. And if you don't move, Cross challenged, what happens when Drask opens fire on civilians? What happens to your reform movement then? Silence filled the channel for several heartbeats. I know, Wren finally said. That's why I'm contacting you. We need time. If you can delay Drask, give us a chance to coordinate with our allies in the capital, we might be able to force a political solution. We have 5 minutes, Talia said, checking the countdown. That's not enough time for anything. Then make him wait, Wren urged. Do what humans do best. Find a way to change the rules of the game. The channel closed. Talia looked at Cross, who was already accessing the ship's communication systems. "You have an idea," she said. "A terrible one," Cross admitted, "but it might work." He opened a wideband broadcast, ensuring every ship in the sector could hear. "High Commander Drask, this is Captain Daniel Cross of the United Earth ship Relentless. I understand you intend to fire on civilian vessels. Before you do, I want to make you an offer." Drask's response was immediate and cold. "The Kryn Empire does not negotiate with those who violate our borders." "I'm not asking you to negotiate," Cross said. "I'm offering you a target, me. I'm the one who brought my ship into your space. I'm the one who engaged the Torvan slavers. I'm the one who took the Virin refugees aboard. Let the civilians leave. Let the refugees go to a neutral world, and I'll surrender myself to Kryn justice." "No," Talia said sharply, but Cross held up a hand to silence her. "My entire crew volunteers the same," Cross continued. 83 people willing to accept responsibility for our actions. Surely that's more valuable to the Empire than firing on unarmed freighters and starting a galactic incident." The tactical display showed movement in Drask's fleet, ships adjusting positions, weapons powering to higher levels. But the countdown timer froze at 2 minutes and 17 seconds. "Your offer is noted, Captain Cross," Drask said. "However, it changes nothing. The Virin refugees are property of the Kryn Empire. They will be returned regardless of your sacrifice." "They're not property," a new voice interrupted. Young, defiant, broadcast on the same channel. Lyra had found another communication panel. "We're people. We have names and families and dreams. You can't own us." "Child, your parents owe debts to the Empire," Drask replied. "Those debts transfer to you. It is law." "It's slavery," Lyra shot back, "and everyone in the galaxy is watching you defend it." Talia pulled up news feeds on her display. Lyra was right. The standoff was being broadcast on hundreds of networks across dozens of worlds. Live commentary from journalists, reactions from political leaders, public protests forming outside Kryn embassy buildings. The Empire's dirty secret was no longer secret. "Sir," a Kryn officer's voice came through on an open channel, clearly not meant to be broadcast. "We're receiving reports from the capital. There are demonstrations in 3 major cities, citizens demanding explanations about the Virin servitude system." "Silence," Drask roared. "All units prepare to fire on my mark." "Negative," Commander Wren's voice cut through the channel. "Silent Wing and associated vessels will not fire on civilian targets." "Wren, stand down immediately or you will be charged with treason," Drask ordered. "I'm already a traitor, sir. I've been one since I started believing our empire could be better than this." The tactical display erupted in chaos. 23 Kryn vessels broke formation, positioning themselves alongside the civilian fleet. Weapons locked onto former allies. The fleet had split into 2 factions, reformists and loyalists, all pointing guns at each other. Talia watched in horror as the situation spiraled beyond anyone's control. This wasn't about refugees anymore. This was the beginning of a Kryn civil war, sparked by a single human rescue mission. Her communicator buzzed, a message from Earth High Command. "Ambassador Reed, human reinforcements are arriving in 90 seconds. 3 destroyers and carrier battle group. Orders are to extract you and Captain Cross. Do not engage Kryn forces." She looked at the hundreds of civilian ships, at the 23 Kryn vessels that had just declared themselves traitors, at the Virin families huddled in the cargo bays below. Extraction would save human lives, but it would abandon everyone else to whatever came next. Talia made her choice. 3 human destroyers materialized at the edge of the sector, their jump signatures blazing across every sensor. Behind them came the carrier group, 6 support vessels surrounding the massive carrier Steadfast. It was the largest show of human military force in Kryn space in over a decade. Talia opened a secure channel to the fleet commander. "Admiral Brooks, this is Ambassador Reed. I'm requesting you hold position and do not engage." "Ambassador, my orders are to extract you immediately," Brooks replied. "The situation here is spiraling beyond control. You need to evacuate now." "If we leave, the Kryn loyalists will fire on civilians," Talia said. "Hundreds of ships full of families who came here because they believed in helping refugees." "That's not our responsibility," Brooks said, though his tone suggested he didn't like saying it. "We cannot start a war with the Kryn Empire over this." "We won't have to start anything," Talia countered. "The war is already starting. Look at your tactical display. Half the Kryn fleet is pointing weapons at the other half. This is a civil conflict now. We just need to make sure innocent people don't get caught in the crossfire." Captain Cross moved beside her. "Admiral Brooks requests permission to speak freely." "Go ahead, Captain." "Sir, those civilian vessels out there came because a 7-year-old girl asked for help. They came because 10 years ago, humanity stood up for their colonies when no one else would. They remember what we did for them. Now they're about to die because they tried to do the same for others. If we run and let that happen, what does that say about who we are?" The channel went quiet for several seconds. "What are you proposing, Ambassador?" Brooks finally asked. "A shield operation," Talia said. "Position human vessels to create escape corridors for the civilians. Don't fire unless fired upon. Just give them a chance to get out of the kill zone before Drask loses patience." "And the Viren refugees?" Talia looked at Cross, who nodded. "We're going to evacuate them to the Steadfast," she said, "under the protection of the Galactic Humanitarian Accords." "The Kryn don't recognize those accords," Brooks pointed out. "Then it's time they learn to," Talia replied. Brooks issued orders and the human fleet moved into position. The destroyers spread out, creating protected lanes between the civilian vessels and the Kryn loyalist forces. The Steadfast launched shuttle craft, dozens of them, all heading toward the damaged Relentless. High Commander Drask's voice thundered across all channels. "Human vessels, you are now actively interfering with Imperial business. This is your final warning. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." "With respect, High Commander," Admiral Brooks responded, "we're not interfering. We're evacuating refugees under humanitarian protocols. Once our operations are complete, we'll be happy to discuss this through proper diplomatic channels." "You will discuss nothing," Drask roared. "All Kryn vessels target the human carrier. Fire on my command." "Negative," Commander Wren's voice cut in. "Reformist vessels will not target human ships engaged in humanitarian rescue." "Then you seal your fate," Drask said. "Loyalist forces, you are authorized to fire on all targets. Reformists, civilians, humans. Eliminate them all." The tactical display lit up with weapons locks, hundreds of them, energy signatures building across the Loyalist fleet. Talia gripped the console, watching death countdown in real time. Then something impossible happened. Jump signatures appeared across the sector, massive ones. A fleet materialized between the Kryn forces and everyone else. Ships with gleaming white hulls marked with the symbol of the Galactic Council. At their center was the largest diplomatic vessel ever constructed, the Council flagship Unity. Every weapon in the sector powered down. The sudden appearance of the Council's peacekeeping fleet had frozen the battle before it could begin. "All vessels, this is Arbiter Solis of the Galactic Council," a commanding voice announced. "You are ordered to stand down immediately. Weapons to minimal power. No hostile actions. The Council is now assuming authority over this sector under emergency peacekeeping protocols." Talia felt her legs go weak. The Council had never moved this fast before. Their peacekeeping forces usually took days to mobilize, weeks to deploy. Yet here they were, arriving at the perfect moment. "How?" Cross whispered. The answer came through Talia's private channel, Commander Wren's voice, barely audible. We sent them everything. 3 hours ago. Every piece of evidence the reformists have been gathering. Proof of illegal slavery, of hired pirates, of Viren families being hunted down. We gambled that if they saw what was really happening, they would have to act. Arbiter Solis continued broadcasting to the entire sector. This council has reviewed extensive evidence of systematic violations of sentient rights within Kryn space, evidence of slavery, illegal trafficking, and the use of violence to maintain forced labor systems. Under council authority, we are implementing immediate protective measures for all Viren individuals currently in this sector. High Commander Drask's ship began moving forward, weapons charging again. The Kryn Empire does not recognize council authority over our internal matters, he declared. Then the Kryn Empire will face economic sanctions, trade embargoes, and potential expulsion from council membership, Solis replied calmly. We estimate this will cost your economy approximately 40% of its gross trade value within the first year. Your choice, High Commander. The Kryn flagship stopped moving. Talia could imagine the calculations happening aboard that vessel. The Empire was powerful, but it relied heavily on trade with council member species. Isolation would devastate their economy. The Emperor will hear of this violation, Drask said, but his weapons powered down. I'm counting on it, Solis replied. In fact, I have a direct channel open to the Imperial Palace right now. Perhaps you should contact them for updated orders. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then Drask's communication channels went dark. The Loyalist fleet began withdrawing to a safe distance, weapons offline but engines ready for quick departure. Commander Wren's ships held position, neither advancing nor retreating. The civilian fleet erupted in cheers, the sound carrying across open channels. Families celebrating survival, relief flooding through hundreds of vessels at once. Talia slumped against the console, exhaustion hitting her all at once. They had done it. Somehow, impossibly, they had avoided a massacre. Captain Cross sat down heavily in the command chair, wincing at the pain in his injured arm. We should evacuate the Viren, he said, before Drask changes his mind. Shuttlecraft swarmed the Relentless, carefully transferring the 847 refugees to the safety of the Council flagship and human carrier. Lyra was among the last to leave. She stopped in front of Talia and Cross. Thank you for not giving up on us, the young girl said. Thank the people who came when you called, Talia replied. They're the real heroes here. Lyra smiled, then ran to join her family on the waiting shuttle. As the last refugees departed, Arbiter Solis contacted Talia directly. Ambassador Reed, you and Captain Cross will need to provide testimony before the Council. There will be investigations, hearings, and quite possibly charges filed. We understand, Talia said. Good, because what happened here today is going to change the galaxy. The council chambers on Station Unity held representatives from 47 different species. Talia sat at the witness table with Captain Cross beside her, both facing a semicircle of judges who would decide their fate. Behind them, gallery seats overflowed with observers, journalists, and diplomats from across the galaxy. Arbiter Solis stood at the center podium, reviewing data on a translucent display. Captain Daniel Cross, you stand accused of violating Kryn territorial sovereignty, engaging in unauthorized military action, and creating a diplomatic incident that brought two major powers to the brink of war. How do you respond? Cross stood, leaning slightly on his cane. His injuries were still healing, but he had refused to delay the hearing. Guilty on all counts, he said simply. I crossed the border without authorization. I engaged the Torvan slavers in Kryn space, and I refused to surrender refugees to people who would have enslaved them. I did all of this knowingly, and I would do it again. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Several Kryn observers stood and left the chamber in protest. "You admit you broke multiple treaties and protocols?" Solis asked. "I admit I chose to save lives over following rules that protect slavery," Cross replied. "If the Council wants to punish me for that, I accept the consequences, but I won't apologize for it." High Commander Drask, representing the Kryn Empire, rose from his seat. "The Council must understand that this human's actions have destabilized our entire region. His interference has encouraged rebellion within our empire. We have reformist factions openly defying authority, citing this incident as justification. There are protests in our cities, work slowdowns in our factories. Captain Cross didn't just violate our border, he attacked the foundation of our society." "A foundation built on forced labor," Cross countered. "Maybe it deserves to be attacked." Solis raised a hand for silence. "The Council has reviewed extensive evidence provided by reformist elements within the Kryn military. Commander Wren, please present your testimony." Wren stepped forward. She wore civilian clothes instead of her uniform, a deliberate choice that marked her as separate from the Empire's military hierarchy. "For 5 years, I have documented systematic abuses of VRIN workers," she said. "Families forced into debt through inflated fees, children born into servitude because of their parents' obligations, violent punishments for those who tried to escape. The Empire calls this a legal labor system. The reality is slavery in everything but name." She activated a holographic display showing hundreds of files. Images of VRIN workers in cramped facilities, documents detailing impossible debt calculations, video recordings of overseers using force against those who complained. "These refugees Captain Cross saved were being hunted by Torvan pirates hired by a Kryn noble," Wren continued. "The noble wanted them back not because they owed legitimate debts, but because they had witnessed illegal trafficking operations. They were going to be silenced permanently." Drask shot to his feet. "This is treason. Commander Wren has no authority to share classified Imperial information." "I resigned my commission 3 days ago," Wren replied calmly. "I no longer serve an empire that profits from suffering." The gallery erupted in noise. Journalists scrambled to send reports. Diplomats activated emergency communications with their home governments. This wasn't just about one rescue mission anymore. This was the Kryn Empire's entire labor system on trial. Solis called for order, waiting until the chamber quieted. "Ambassador Reed, you also face charges of unauthorized military coordination and interference in Kryn internal affairs. What is your defense?" Talia stood, her hands clasped behind her back. "I coordinated civilian vessels to protect innocent lives. I requested human military support to create evacuation corridors. At no point did I order offensive action against Kryn forces. My only goal was to prevent a massacre of unarmed civilians who were trying to help refugees." "Yet your actions led to a split in the Kryn fleet," Solis noted. 23 warships declared themselves reformists and turned against their own empire. Some would argue you incited rebellion." "Some would be wrong," Talia replied. "The reformist movement existed long before the Relentless crossed that border. Commander Wren and her allies had been gathering evidence for years. We didn't create their grievances. We just provided a moment where those grievances could no longer be ignored." A new figure entered the chamber. Delegates parted to allow passage for an elderly VRIN male wearing simple work clothes. He walked slowly to the witness stand, his blue skin marked with scars from decades of labor. "My name is Oren," he said, his voice surprisingly strong. "I am 73 years old. I have worked in Kryn facilities since I was 6. My parents died in service. My children were born into service. My grandchildren would have died in service if Captain Cross had not acted." He turned to face Drask directly. "You say the captain attacked your society's foundation. Good. Your foundation is built on our backs, on our pain, on generations of Viren who never knew freedom. If one human ship can shake that foundation, then it was already crumbling. Oren looked at Cross and Talia. These humans risked everything to save people they had never met. They faced your empire's entire fleet. They would have died rather than hand us over. That is not a diplomatic incident. That is what morality looks like. The chamber fell silent. Even the journalists stopped typing, stunned by the old Viren's quiet dignity. Solis reviewed her notes, then addressed the full assembly. The council will now deliberate. Captain Cross, Ambassador Reed, please wait outside while we reach our decision. Talia and Cross stood in the corridor while the council debated behind closed doors. Human guards stayed close, ready to intervene if any of the angry Kryn observers tried something aggressive. "What do you think they'll decide?" Cross asked. "I think they're terrified," Talia replied. "Not of us. Of what happens next. If they rule in our favor, the Kryn might leave the council. If they rule against us, every species that suffered under similar systems will lose faith in the council's ability to protect rights." The chamber doors opened. An aide gestured for them to return. Arbiter Solis stood at the center podium, her expression unreadable. "The council has reached its decision." Arbiter Solis's voice carried across the silent chamber, each word measured and deliberate. "Captain Daniel Cross, you are found guilty of violating Kryn territorial sovereignty. However, the Council recognizes that your actions were driven by humanitarian necessity. You are hereby sentenced to a formal reprimand and reassignment to Council Humanitarian Coordination. You will serve as a witness and advisor in the ongoing investigation of labor practices throughout the Kryn Empire." Drask stood immediately. "This is unacceptable. The captain must face proper punishment." "Commander Drask," Solis said coolly, "the Council's decision is final. Furthermore, evidence provided by Commander Wren and her reformist allies has prompted us to open a full investigation into Viren labor practices. Until this investigation concludes, all Viren individuals are granted provisional refugee status and may not be forcibly returned to Kryn space." The Kryn delegation walked out of the chamber in unified protest. Their departure barely registered in the chaos that followed. Journalists rushed to file stories. Diplomats scrambled to update their governments. The galaxy was watching history unfold in real time. Talia felt the weight lift from her shoulders. They had won, not just the hearing, but something larger. The Council was finally willing to confront systematic oppression within member states. 3 months later, Talia stood on the observation deck of a Council station watching a transport ship arrive. The vessel carried the first wave of Viren refugees who had chosen to resettle on a neutral world rather than return to Kryn space. Lyra's family was among them. The young girl ran across the docking bay and wrapped her arms around Talia's waist. "We have our own home now," Lyra said, her eyes bright with excitement. "A real home, with a garden and everything." "That's wonderful," Talia said, kneeling to meet the girl's eyes. "What are you going to plant?" "Flowers from the old stories," Lyra replied. "My grandmother used to tell me about gardens on our original homeworld before the Kryn came. Now we can grow them again." Oren, the elderly Viren who had testified at the hearing, approached with his family. His grandson carried a small plant in a ceramic pot. "Ambassador Reed, we wanted you to have this," Oren said. "It's from the first seeds we planted in freedom, a reminder that what you and Captain Cross did mattered." Talia accepted the gift carefully. "I can't take all the credit. There were hundreds of people involved." "We know," Oren replied, "but it started with humans who refused to look away. That's worth remembering." A message alert chimed on Talia's communicator. Captain Cross, requesting a video call. She excused herself and found a quiet corner to answer. Cross appeared on the screen, sitting in an office aboard the Council flagship Unity. His arm had healed completely, though he still wore the formal uniform marking his new position. "How's the first day of retirement treating you?" Talia asked with a smile. "This isn't retirement," Cross replied. "I've been reviewing labor practices in 4 different systems. Turns out the Kryn weren't the only ones using debt servitude to hide slavery. The Council is finding similar patterns across multiple empires. Are they going to do anything about it?" "That's the interesting part," Cross said. "Public pressure is forcing them to act. After what happened with the Relentless, citizens across the galaxy are demanding accountability. Species are threatening to leave the Council if reforms aren't implemented. For once, doing the right thing is also the politically necessary thing." Talia watched transport ships continue to arrive, each one carrying more Viren families to their new homes. "What about Commander Wren and the reformists?" "The Kryn Empire is negotiating with them," Cross reported. "The Emperor doesn't want a civil war. He's offering gradual reforms, phasing out the debt servitude system over 10 years. Wren thinks it's too slow, but she's willing to accept it as a starting point. 10 years is a long time for people waiting for freedom." "True," Cross agreed, "but it's better than never, and the Council is establishing monitoring stations to ensure the Empire follows through. If they backslide, the sanctions will be severe." A new alert appeared on Talia's screen, an urgent message from Earth High Command. "I have to go," she said. "Another crisis developing in the outer sectors." "Humans rushing to help people in trouble?" Cross asked. "Shocking." Talia ended the call and pulled up the details. A colony ship stranded in neutral space, engines failing, supplies running low. The nearest military vessel was days away. But there was a human freighter captain willing to divert and attempt a rescue if she had official authorization. Talia sent the authorization without hesitation. 6 months after the incident in Kryn space, the Galactic Council passed the Rights of Sentient Workers Act. The legislation prohibited debt servitude, forced labor contracts, and inherited obligations across all member systems. Enforcement would take years, but the foundation had been laid. The destroyed Relentless was never recovered. Its wreckage drifted through space, eventually crossing into a nebula where it would remain for centuries. But its crew became legends. Stories spread across the galaxy about the humans who faced an Empire's fleet to protect refugees. Civilian vessels began painting small symbols on their hulls, a simple design showing a human hand extended toward stars. It became known as the Protector's Mark, a signal that the ship's crew believed in helping those in need regardless of borders or politics. Talia received reports of the symbol appearing on vessels from dozens of species. What had started as one captain's decision to answer a distress call had become a movement. She stood in her office aboard the diplomatic station, looking at the plant Orin had given her. Small blue flowers had bloomed, delicate and beautiful, a reminder that freedom could grow even from the harshest conditions. Her communicator chimed again. Another emergency, another group of people needing help. Talia grabbed her jacket and headed for the shuttle bay. This was what humans did. They showed up when called. They stood between the vulnerable and those who would harm them. They believed that every life had value, regardless of species or circumstance. The galaxy was learning to expect this from humanity, and more importantly, other species were learning to expect it from themselves. One rescue mission had changed everything, not because it was perfect or easy, but because it proved that choosing compassion over convenience was possible. As Talia's shuttle launched toward the next crisis, she thought about Lyra's question from that cargo bay. Is this what the galaxy has become? Not anymore, Talia thought. Not if we can help it.